Here's the thing. This rebate sounds incredible on paper, but what actually happens at the table is a totally different story, and most buyers have no idea.
You're listening to the Ottawa Real Estate Podcast, your go-to source for all things Canadian real estate. And now, here are your hosts, Paul Stevenson and David Warren.
Hello and welcome back to the Ottawa Real Estate Podcast, your go-to source for all things Canadian real estate. My name is Paul Stevenson. I'm a Level 2 mortgage agent. I'm joined by David Warren, Level 2 mortgage agent and owner at Referral Mortgages. And we're back. We're here. Thank you to our amazing sponsors and thank you for listening. It's April 1st, Dave. No joke. We got some things to talk about today. We got some rebate information, the HST rebate, the big headline this week. And you had some other stuff about on the development side you wanted to touch on. How's the week, Dave? Talk to me. What's going on over there?
Week's good. We had our brokerage development day on Friday, so it was a busy week leading up to that.
And really good.
Had some great speakers on Friday kind of talking about the economy and where things are at with our conflict oil prices, how that's impacting things, all the rage of conversation on Friday. But no, it was nice to obviously have that and have everyone in the room, but also at the same time, it's very nice to have that over with so I can now focus on other things and move on. But been a good start to the week. So certainly no complaints. How about yourself, Paul? How about yourself?
Yeah, having organized those sorts of events, I think people don't really understand like all the stuff that goes on the back end, especially as the organizer. Like there's so much planning and organizing and people you have to manage and scheduling and everything else. So it's a lot. So when it's done, you feel like a big kind of like there's a lot of space now, to take on new client conversations, Dave, new information like this amazing HST rebate that Doug Ford announced this week.
Great segue. Segue Stevenson.
So, what is this program, Dave? This has been, that was the rage last week was the oil prices. This week, it's all about this HST rebate, which actually, when this comes out, will take effect now. It takes effect today, April 1st. So what are you seeing? I just want to break it down. Here's the thing. I've had countless conversations in the last probably 4 days about this since it was announced. And it seems like there's so much confusion, so much misinterpretation, so much misunderstanding. People just don't know what's happening. So we're hoping today to break it down very clearly, very cleanly for everyone. And Dave, why don't we just start by explaining what this program actually is? Just a very clean explanation.
For sure. So up until now, the federal government has had a rebate program just for first-time homebuyers on the HST. The intent with that was obviously a program that never actually really moved the needle from a buyer standpoint. Pushing first-time homebuyers to purchase those products, specifically in Ontario and in the major markets where there's product or unsold inventory on the market. The hope was that would have spurned those buyers. It never actually happened, and nothing really came to it. So on March 25th, last week, Doug Ford announced that Ontario will eliminate the full 13% HST on new homes valued up to $1 million for a 1 year period starting today, April 1st, 2026, and running for a full 1 year. So it's expanding the eligibility beyond just first-time homebuyers and incorporating all purchasers, including investors buying rental properties. So it's building on the federal first-time homebuyer GST rebate, which was announced through the Bill C4, named the Making Life More Affordable for Canadians Act. I love that these names are always hilarious. But anyways, it passed. The federal portion passed March 12th. So they're combining two programs in Ontario on a new home. For a single new home, you can have a rebate up to $130,000. So if somebody's buying a property that the builder cost is, say, $1 million plus HST would be that $130,000 more. So your mortgage your purchase price is then $1.13 million. So in this case, you're saving $130,000 from your mortgage, and that's really kind of bringing down that cost. Now, a couple things that are confusing with it is that this is just Ontario that it is applying to, where it's covering all purchasers. So I know when people from other provinces are looking at this Bill C4 or what Ontario is doing, or when you, as somebody listening to this has maybe looked it up and it has been confusing as to like, is this applying federally? Is it applying just in Ontario? Kind of what is the differences? So federally, the government is getting rid of the 5% HST. That is across that's across the country. So they're eliminating the 5% federal portion of the HST on newly built homes for eligible only for first-time home buyers, but it's now expanding at 1 million for a full rebate, and then a partial rebate between 1 and 1.5 million, and that's going for 5 years. So anything signed, an agreement signed between March 20th, 2025 and December 31st, 2030, you can save up to 50,000, and that's federally, so across the entire country. But that, again, that's applying just to first-time homebuyers. It was where Ontario, they partnered with the federal government to eliminate the entire 13%, the provincial and the federal portion, for the next year. So running from today, April 1st, 2026 to March 31st, 2027. So you have a 1-year window where people can purchase new property, a new product, sign a purchase agreement for that new product and take advantage of that full 13%. So I think what we're going to see is a lot of unsold inventory in Toronto and Ottawa and other places that have been sitting on the market. The buyers coming as of today onward and purchasing these properties.
Yeah, I think that's a good summary. So like 5% federally, 8% provincially. I think the biggest confusion is how like people think that, at least people I spoke to, clients, believe that they're going to buy this home and then they're going to get a rebate, like a check almost of 130,000. Like that's kind of like, just when you read like, oh, we're going to get $130,000 rebate, like what you initially think is, oh, we're going to get cash back in hand, like almost like a reimbursement of some kind. But that's not really how it works in practice. Like most of the time, buyers don't pay that HST up front. Like it's built into the price of that new build anyways. So builders can either, and what I think will probably happen is they'll probably either offer like credits to rebate directly at closing, or I think more likely like upgrade credits, which would be like a way that they could kind of circumvent this in some way, or at least like make it seem like they're getting, maybe 80,000 in upgrades. Upgrades are always a weird thing with new builds. We can get into that in a different day, but they could apply it as credits. They could apply it as like a reduction to the purchase price effectively, which I think would make the most sense. But then it does also impact the market. If we're seeing home prices reduced by, 10%, are builders going to want to do that? And then you have someone who entered into an agreement. I had this conversation with someone who was like waiting and asking every question you could think of about this program. Like I had to sharpen my sword just to, like they were an expert basically, but they were asking me and I just said, listen, like you have to be careful when you enter into these agreements, because if your builder, for example, hasn't applied or doesn't know how they're going to apply this yet, and you enter an agreement at 800,000, if they choose to reduce their price down to 715, and now you're closing in a year from now, people are buying these homes at 715 and that's the comparable, that could actually really, if you're bought in early, like that could actually hurt you as when it comes time to closing, because now the comparables are 100,000 less than what you paid, let's say 6 months ago or something. Now, I don't think that's going to happen often, but that there is some risks involved in this as well. So like from the conversations you've had, Dave, what are kind of the common questions you're hearing or kind of misunderstandings? And what are kind of, I guess, some of the pros and cons that you see and how builders are going to implement this on their end?
So, I mean, the first-time home buyer credit or rebate has like been there. There's been an HST rebate on new construction of up to 24,000 for years. That's been applied on the purchase agreement when somebody's signing it. They're seeing like the purchase price less a 24,000 rebate, and it's obviously so long as the qualifications are there, which is really just their lawyer at closing verifying that they meet that. I think it's going to happen with the exact same way in this, is that it'll be purchase price, the gross purchase price, just like you see on a purchase agreement now. Say of that million by the builder, that's the cost of building the home plus HST, so 1.13 less the less that 130,000 rebate, and it's the builder that's applying for that back to them from the federal and provincial government, because obviously on the builder side they have credits for HST they've incurred and things like that, so it helps to offset those what are called ITCs. But so I think it will be at closing that it's being applied. But what there is within a lot of the information and articles out there is kind of that gray area where people signed into purchase agreements very recently, before this was announced. Um, and for those, they have said that you need to apply to CRA to see if you can still be eligible for people that might have closed on a home, very recently. Again, whether CRA actually goes through with that or not, who knows? That's to be seen. But I think it will. I think it's certainly going to move the needle in areas like Toronto, things like that. However, if it's a condo where it's already overpriced because they built it based on pricing from years ago and it's been sitting unsold, and now somebody buying at, and there's articles out there, like people buying new construction at $1,250, $1,500 a square foot for some of these condos in Toronto, but a resale, because resale values or prices are down so much and they're in the 900,000, it still doesn't make sense for someone to buy that new construction. However, there is the argument from builders that perhaps now they take those units that they had as they've been sitting as unsold inventory and actually converting it to purpose rentals, which now they're able to get the HST rebate on, which lowers their cost on it and then makes it, a viable rental for them going forward. I know I've had conversations with clients where they've been like, waiting. They know that there's a development coming out and a release coming out where purchase prices are over $1 million and they're coming out shortly. And they said, you know what? Like, I was debating whether to go through with it. This kind of just made up my mind that I'm going to, jump on this house for this upgrade because of being able to get $130,000 off.
Yeah, I think the goal was to kind of stimulate new construction and just kind of get people thinking of new builds again, because it's really like people kind of shifted away from that, like you said, thinking, okay, well, I can get basically the same home, larger or like better features in a better neighborhood for around the same price as this, new construction. So why would I go that route? Or, people there was some stagnation over the last year and a half, as we said, just because people were waiting and all those kind of new buyers that would maybe step into that market are not there. So I think they're just trying to churn, as Sean was saying last week, I think there's just something to stimulate new construction, kind of churn the market a bit. And his issue has been lack of supply for years now. And I think this just kind of incentivizes like pre-construction purchases, new builds, and developer activities. That just hopefully gets people into the market and at least out shopping and looking, kind of churns that market a bit. Some of the pros for buyers that I see is like kind of a sales angle, is that obviously the massive upfront savings, they get the $130,000 off potentially. It has a direct impact on their affordability. So, if that reduces the price of the home, that's going to allow them to get maybe a better home for, lesser than what it would cost today. So that's, lower mortgage, easier qualifying, all that's kind of, it's relative, but it's not like the direct benefit to me. I think the fact that it creates opportunity for pre-construction, so it makes new builds more competitive versus resale, I think is good, because again, it just kind of turns that market a bit. I think some of the cons that people are going to miss is that builders will adjust pricing. Some will increase the base prices and some are going to absorb part of that benefit. So I don't think all the savings are going to be passed on to the buyer. I think at the high level, it sounds great, but really if that rebate, I think there's going to be some creative structuring on the back end. We know that builders have been kind of getting hit for the last few years. There's a lot of the jobs as well in the trades have kind of slowed down because of the fact that there has been all this construction. So hopefully this is actually going back to pros, not related to buyers, but hopefully this also stimulates the economy in the sense that it gets more shovels in the ground, more workers on site, more jobs created, which would be obviously great from an economy standpoint, which I think is what they're trying to stimulate here in Ontario. So yeah, so I think, generally speaking, there's going to be pros and cons on both sides. And I think depending on how this shakes out is going to, there's going to influence people's actions. It really is interesting to see. I'm interested to see how this is implemented by different builders and what sort of creative measures they might take to make their units look more attractive, But what are some of the pros and cons, Dave, that you see or that you think could come from this, both for buyers and for builders?
Are you thinking of buying or selling a residential property? Relationships are at the heart of every real estate transaction at Gertin-Poirier Avocat Lawyers. We love to bring residential buyers, sellers, agents, lenders, mortgage brokers, and the law together to close the deal for you for an effortless client experience that opens doors. Call us at 613-744-4488 or visit our website at gertinpoirierlaw.ca. Let's get to the heart of your deal. Are you trying to grow your mortgage business? Centum has the tools and support to help you take your business to the next level. Get access to everything from free unlimited custom marketing to daily direct pay. Find out what your business can do with Centum. Learn more at joincentum.ca. Your home is one of your biggest investments, and the team at Big Westboro can help you protect it. Our expert brokers will find the perfect coverage to keep your home and belongings safe. Call 613-239-5792 or visit thebig.ca/Westboro for a free quote. Think big, protect what matters most. Even the best photographer can't hide drywall dust and paint splatter. And every day you delay listing could mean missing peak spring pricing in Ottawa. A to Z Cleaning Expert gets your property truly photo ready. Don't risk going to market half ready. Mention TowRep at atozcleaningexpert.com to receive priority scheduling for your next listing.
I think on the builder side, I don't think they're going to manipulate prices as much as people think.
Okay.
I think right now they're not selling homes. Selling is what they need to do. Unloading that inventory, getting that cash in, getting rid of that expense off the balance sheet is more important than making a couple extra bucks. Like, they need to move that inventory as opposed to selling zero homes. I don't, at least in the beginning, I don't think, and because it's only lasting a year, I don't think they're going to manipulate pricing that much. Because again, like, they're not, especially in Toronto, like, they're not selling any inventory. And even Ottawa, there hasn't been the new product inventory kind of going or unloading as quickly as it was before. And these builders need to, like, for unsold inventory, they're holding it. It's very costly for them. They're not able to start other projects. It's really just burning a hole on their balance sheet. So I think that's super important thing to keep in mind on that side. And then from an overall GDP standpoint, the industry really, again, looking at Toronto being a massive, massive market, the provincial government is thinking that with this plan, it could spurn up to 8,000 extra housing starts across the province in 2027. So if it does lead to even a fraction of that, that is tens of thousands of jobs being created or being put back into the Ontario market, where they've had to go south or they've had to go, migrate to other provinces that are busier. And so from a provincial standpoint, it really should help to move the market from a GDP standpoint, generate new jobs, and get things in the trades moving again, because there is, they're hurting, combining the tariff issue and the housing slowdown, like that, it's a massive issue for them. So I think that's obviously the hope, and that the cost of the rebates is going to be offset by the number of jobs that it's creating over this next year.
Yeah. And I guess just to, defend my position, not that you're countering my position, but I think I more so think that if there's a $80,000 rebate, I don't think that's necessarily going to come dollar for dollar off the sale price. And I think builders will do it differently. Like I said, I think there'll be incentives. Some builders will do that. Just like, here's your million, here's your 130 tax, here's your 130 off. But I think others will try to be creative to try to incentivize people to go to theirs versus others. I think what this really does ultimately is it lowers the barrier to entry, which I think is good. It pushes buyers towards new builds, which hasn't really happened for a while, like probably pre-COVID or at least like in that time frame. And it helps builders move inventory for the next year, which, as you said, like they kind of have like, tomorrow or today when this comes out, the stopwatch has started. And now it's like, okay, how many sales can we get through or out the door in the next 12 months? Because this is our window, I think just pushing buyers towards new builds will be beneficial for the overall market as far as just like that burning and churning.
And it's for years to come. It's not like it's purchase agreements signed over the next year. It's not that they have to close either over the next year. So I think you're going to see like that unsold inventory that's sitting on the market in Toronto. I think there will be help in either those builders converting them to rentals, that they, it's that extra supply being removed from the market and helping, again, rental affordability, bringing down the cost of rents, things like that, helping those builders be able to cycle that money, to spurn that new construction, which then brings in trades, brings in jobs, and then combine that with the HST rebate, which I just kind of looked at the math of it at $130,000 saving at a 4.29% fixed rate on a 25-year amortization is $707 in savings a month. So you're
Wow.
saving effectively $8,400 a year in just payments alone, on that $130,000 savings, which is drastic for people.
Yeah, and going back to that affordability, like I think that's where buyers will feel it the most, right? Is in that monthly payment, and obviously what they're actually putting towards this property every month. I think they'll really that's where you're going to feel it is in the pocketbooks, and that's why I think this is a good incentive. Like it's pushing people towards the new builds. It's a win for the developers, but also I think from a affordability standpoint for Canadians, like or at least for Ontarians, for now, some partially Canadians, all Ontarians. I think it's really good from just an affordability and just bottom line budgeting standpoint.
Yeah, and we'll see. Like this is on for 1 year. The federal government is going till 2030. So, it's really it could be something that if it is a success over the next year, that the provincial government extends it, perhaps kind of, waiting to see what that feedback from builders is, waiting to see what that feedback from Korea is, how that impacts the market. But the whole goal with it is like there's multifold I see is not only spurning new housing, more housing, I
Mhm.
should say, which the more that's there and that's being built helps to bring down that cost from an affordability standpoint, but bringing in more jobs and obviously that increasing our GDP because, we, I believe the GDP numbers are coming out today, are expected to be zero or negative, which puts us in a recession, like the recessionary conversation. But all that aside, and that's kind of getting into a whole different topic, but, I think it, it could help depending on how much it moves inventory, could help with affordability, and it could also help with also the rental market because it also applies to 4 units and up purpose built rentals from an HST. So people that are developing built rentals as well can have that HST component built in there too from a rebate perspective. Like another thing that was massive, it kind of came out a few days later after this HST rebate, is that in Ontario that they're slashing development fees by up to 50%. So it's a
Yes.
partnership between both the federal and provincial governments spending nearly $9 billion to cut development fees, which I've talked about at nauseum, to boost home building. So what this is looking at is under this new agreement, it's a new 10-year agreement between the federal and Ontario governments, and they've committed 8.8 billion combined for housing enabling infrastructure. The funding is designed to backstop municipal budgets as councils reduce development charges by up to 50% for 3 years. So the cuts that would apply to municipalities covering roughly 80% of the province's populations. So municipalities are expected to shoulder part of the cost, but it's creating a partnership between all three levels of government, between municipal, provincial, and federal, in order to cut these. So, what does this mean? Like CMHC data showed that development charges accounted for 8 to 16%, upwards of 16% of a new condo's price is development charges, and 9% of a single detached home in Toronto. Like that's a wild number when you think about it,
Yeah.
from a cost perspective. So when combining this, if you're reducing development charges by 50%, so now it's going to only account for 4 to 8% of that new condo or 4.5% on a detached home, like that's a massive savings. I believe the Toronto, like a single family detached home, I believe it's around 130,000, 120,000 is the development charge alone for a single detached home in Toronto. So if you're combining like that savings with this HST savings, it's a significant amount of money that home buyers are saving, and from a reducing the overall cost of on new builds, which can really, kind of really when combining these can really spurn development and really kind of like pushing that, like I said, kind of combining that, getting upwards of 8,000 new housing starts. And what they're kind of estimating is creating up to 21,000 jobs, which would add about 2.7 billion in GDP in Ontario alone. So that 8.8 is over 10 years, which effectively is 880 million. But you're look per year, but you're looking at a 2.7 billion in Ontario GDP being added.
Yeah, and between like combined with that HST rebate, if the total savings could be up to say 200,000 per home, like that in theory should lower purchase prices like across the board, which would be great. or at a minimum, it should prevent like further price escalation, right? Like, and creating the job. So like these two programs combined, we've been saying this for about a year and a half, probably two, actually probably since Greg was on the show, that like all of these are needed, like lowering the development charges, like offering additional rebates for first time buyers. Like we've kind of been talking about it. So it's great, positive news, not pumping the market. Very good to see that they're actually implementing these things that will have like direct impacts on the economy from a job creation standpoint and from housing affordability, and obviously the supply issue that we've been dealing with for many years. So I think both of these things combined is like very good for Ontario, very good for Canada. And I think it will actually stimulate the market. So I think, all in all, I think both of these programs are going to be really beneficial for Ontarians specifically.
Yeah, I mean, we're still like, and this is for people to keep in mind, even though we see supply on the market in Toronto, in Ottawa, is that CMHC is still forecasting that we still need an additional 3.5 million new homes by 2030. That's 4 years from now. Obviously, we're not getting
Yeah.
that, but that's to address affordability. So, what we talked about last week with Sean is, what's kind of forgotten about or way supply is eaten up specifically is like first time home buyers buying a unit. It's zeroing out the market. It's not a 1-for-1 replacement. If I go and buy another home, my house is going on the market. There's not like, it's not supply necessarily being
Not
removed from
creating
market,
supply, yeah.
but there's
Right.
but there's so many first time home buyers out there that have lost hope of not being able to get in the market, that as soon if they come back to the market, that is going to absorb supply out of inventory, which we need new construction because we don't want that segment of first time home buyers to eat up all that inventory, which then causes a
prices
supply
skyrocket.
shortage. And then we see prices
Yeah.
skyrocket, and we kind of fall into that same cycle. We need those people. We need that supply back there. And really, we need the builders to build, and we need to make their projects more viable. We need that churn of closing so that builders can have margin, so that projects aren't killed and they're not, that margin isn't there, and we're delaying construction. Like, to me, it's fine that they're making a profit, because otherwise we have no one building. Projects have to be viable. They have to keep moving. There has to be a churn in order for us to get that supply. And the faster we can churn those units, the more supply we're going to have on the market, which is going to bring down housing costs and affordability for people. My concern really in like this, the lower development charges, is where does the municipal governments make that up? Because that's a huge portion of their annual budgets is in development charges. So where are they going to get those funds from? Is it from increased property taxes? Is it from other like taxes within the municipality that they have to then address and increase? My argument is that if it's spurning the market, you're getting more people closing on homes, you're increasing that land transfer tax income that municipalities rely on as well. I think that's my biggest concern, is that they look at it at a high level of like, oh, we're losing this amount of revenue from development charges. We now need to replace it immediately with something we can see right away in property taxes, as opposed to saying, okay, well, actually, let's look at the metrics. Now we're going to get that many more units. We're going to get land transfer tax. Like, that's going to start rolling in more so, and look at it that way. But that's my fear, is that when dropping these charges, that the municipalities are going to hit us on the other side.
Okay, Dave, should we slide into some mood boosts?
Let's do it.
All right. So I got 3 today, as usual. Number 1, have you ever heard about the kidnapping at school? It's okay. He woke up. Number 2, I found a book called How to Solve 50% of Your Problems. So I bought 2. Problem solved. Number 3, why did the coffee taste like dirt? Because it was ground just a few minutes ago.
Kid. You know what? I liked all 3. I must say,
wow.
It's very rare. It's very rare.
Yeah, that's a rarity. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. New episodes released every Wednesday at 10 a.m. Thank you to our amazing sponsors, and thank you, David. Thank you. We'll be back next week.
Paul.
Thanks for tuning in. Bye, everyone.
Deuces.